Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Psychology Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Karim. In my podcast, I interview extraordinary people and pick their brains. Each episode will feature a guest who will stimulate your mind and give you a different perspective on the many paths that can lead to a rich and fulfilled life. This includes their favorite books, morning routines, exercise habits, trade secrets, nutritional philosophies, and their overall take on happiness and success. My goal is to find out where those amazing people get their holistic results from, so that you and I can use their tactics and go kick ass in life as well. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy today's episode.
Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Daniel. I'm from Germany. I'm a writer, a psychology student, an entrepreneur, and I wanted to interview you because you already achieved a whole bunch of stuff that are on my big career and personal bucket list. And I wanted to ask you firsthand, how did you get there, what it's like to be you, and just connect with you as a person.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm sure, and it's so funny because a lot what you're doing right now is on my bucket list. I want to go to South Africa. I want to travel the world, and I want to, meet the people, meet the different cultures, and immerse myself. That's something that's on my bucket list. So we can learn from one another.
Yeah,
here.
I can understand that. This is one of my dreams, is to combine the area of psychology and combine that with my lust for travel and just collect stories on the way. I feel that this is helping me so much in becoming a better psychologist and also having a lot of fun while doing so.
Oh, that's awesome. That's everything, is having fun and, while doing what you're passionate about and making a difference. That's everything that you work for in life. I
agree. Want me to walk you 10 seconds through the interview, what I was planning on doing with you? I wanted to, the first section is a little bit about you, where I ask about your career, how you grew up and all that stuff. Second question, I would love to ask what makes you happy as a person. This is a big theme of mine, is I want to understand what drives you and what gives you happiness, because this was something that I, for a long time, struggled with, and which is why I focused especially on the area of mood disorders and depression. And then I want to talk a tiny bit about your habits, and then it's just a short 4-minute questionnaire where I just shoot you a bunch of questions that will not take longer than, let's say, 20 to 50 seconds. Yeah, given how much you have on your plate, and the very first question that I wanted to ask you is, why did you accept to talk to me? You must have a quadrillion things to do on your to-do list for today. Why did you took an hour out of your busy schedule to talk to a stranger?
Why? Because I say yes to things that excite me, and what you're doing excites me, and so I said yes. So that's how I kind of drive myself and prioritize things. So when something excites me, I go for it and I do it. And I love connecting. I love learning about what other people are doing. And so it sounded like the perfect opportunity. But then I love being able to talk to people that I'm, beyond my one-on-one setting, where I'm just, seeing patients and things like that. I love to be able to talk to people who aren't coming in to see me on that aspect. So on a broader level, it feels good. It kind of changes things up and keeps things fresh for me in my mind. And I love it. So that's why. Long answer for you.
No, beautiful answer. I'm honored. You're really, this is really exciting for me. So let's get going. You were talking about patients. If people ask you what you do, what do you say to them?
Well, right now, I definitely would say that I am professionally, I'm a psychologist. I'm a licensed psychologist. And I work with pretty much older adolescents and young adults is my niche area. But pretty much focusing on kind of life, building your identity, life transitions, and kind of developing your sense of self. And, managing things like perfectionism and mood disorders, anxiety disorders, all of those types of things, while also kind of striving for and achieving your dreams. So being able to do both at the same time. So I really, really love helping people to juggle all the demands of life and all the areas of their life to achieve a sense of flourishing rather than just like a sense of surviving day to day.
What was the first moment you knew you wanted to be a psychologist?
Okay, this is a tough moment to bring you to, but I will do it. I think you knew this. I worked with children with cancer for a long time, and I developed one of my first relationships when I was in college at Duke University Hospital. I was working with a little girl, Khadijah. Her dad actually might hear this interview because we still like follow each other online, and it's awesome. And she was 10 years old, and I spent pretty much every day with her during my first year of college while she was going through a bone marrow transplant for cancer. And I was doing it through like a documentary studies class. So nothing to do with psychology, but just helping her to kind of document her time and give her a creative outlet through photography. And I developed this incredible relationship with her. And it really was when I saw her pretty much like one of her last days of life in the hospital. And I was standing next to her, and she was holding this teddy bear that I had gotten her like in a gift shop at one point, after a hard day. And she was, pretty much on life support at that point and holding this teddy bear. And I just thought like, that the way that she impacted my life, I just want to continue to kind of take that forward and help people with that mental aspect. Because what she showed me is that even in the midst of the greatest suffering that you can imagine, and that's what her father showed me as well, watching his daughter go through this, that you can be happy, that you can cherish life, that you can still live. And that wasn't anything to do with the medicine at that point. That was all the mind. And I thought it was absolutely incredible. And she changed my life at that point. And really sparked something within me to help people to use their minds to get through whatever they're facing. Sometimes it's little stuff, and sometimes it's really, really hard stuff. But regardless, to use the mind as a huge tool.
Wow, that was more than I expected. First of all, thank you so much for sharing this.
I felt like I don't want to get like too tough. Like that was like right off the bat, let's just go to like one of the hardest moments. But yeah.
No, but this is the very reason why I want to connect with people, because I feel yesterday I interviewed Jeffrey Kotler, he's one of the best known therapists in the world. And he has a beautiful saying that a psychologist or a therapist has the privilege of living the life of 1,000 lives, meaning that we meet all those different stories, and those stories create experience in us. And this is really what I'm after, because this is how I learn the best, I feel. What was something that you learned from this beautiful little girl that still affects you from a day-to-day basis and that you give on to your clients?
To really be in the moment, even amidst suffering, so with her, she loved drawing and all of that. So I think just connecting with that childlike sense of freedom where you're not overthinking things and just fully living in that moment. So regardless of where you are, take up a piece of paper, pen, just start drawing and seeing what happens when you let go of the feeling of I have to do something this way, I have to check something off my list, kind of getting out of that mentality and just doing something to do it, rather than for it having to be for this, this next project or the next thing, all of those things. And I think also really more powerfully, it really taught me the power of connecting with people and how to do that. She taught me that there is nothing that you have to say to anyone when they're suffering or in a hard moment. Simply sitting with someone in that moment is the greatest gift you can give them. And so, and it's not just that, but it's also, as someone who is suffering, and if you need to, it's hard to ask for or tell, the people around you what you need. What you need often is just someone to sit with you and be with you and see you in that moment and not do anything, to change it, not try to say something to make it seem all better or like all glossy, like just sit with what you're experiencing in that moment with you. And that is definitely the most powerful lesson I learned from her. And that's something that can't be taught. It's not like you're going to learn that in a textbook. That's what you're seeing as well when you're connecting with people, and you're seeing people and listening to their stories on the street. You are listening to them. You are being with them. And that experience of being heard and being seen, regardless of circumstance, it's transformative. And so I don't underestimate that at all.
Couldn't agree more. For years, I don't want to go too deep into it, but my father is very sick and also mentally. And one of my greatest burdens, I think, was because I have this drive to become an excellent psychologist one day, was that I wanted to take his suffering away. And what really helped me was that I learned that although I cannot take all his symptoms away, that I was helping him all those years by just being in the same room with him and looking in the eyes and showing him, hey, I'm your son and I love you and this is shit, but let's go through this together. And this is really what frees me of this curse of being too harsh to myself, that I couldn't heal him in a way.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. It's that recognizing. And I think that is so powerful, because you're not changing it, and you recognize, like, of course, if you could have changed it, you would. If there were a magic wand that you would have been able to put over the person, you don't want them to suffer. But there is no magic wand. So to pretend that it's not there and to, try to avoid it because you can't do anything, which is what a lot of people do, is they'll, when people are suffering, if they feel like they can't do anything to help that person, they go in the opposite direction. And instead, what people need is just really to be seen and kind of, seen and heard and understood in that suffering. We all do as humans.
We do. What was one thing that surprised you while walking with all those teenagers who had cancer?
One thing, oh my gosh, there were so many things that surprised me, but it was just, I kept thinking how there was really like I can't make a generalization because I didn't work with everyone, obviously. So it might have been just my sample of people that I worked with and had the opportunity to become, close with, but just like this drive to live that was sparked, because as a teenager, as a young adult, usually you have this sense of like immortality, where you don't feel like you need to do things or like appreciate the moment or the day or the experiences because you're young and you have forever. And I think an experience like cancer, that takes away that sense of innocence and immortality. And so you're forced to learn how to live and appreciate life at a much deeper level very early on. And that's absolutely incredible. And so I've just, to be able to see that to be able to kind of compare that and that mindset to kind of, people in my friends who were not going through cancer and were healthy and all of that, it was such a stark difference to see kind of the mindset change, between these two groups. And that kind of demonstrated to me that there's something here. It wasn't cancer. It's not something about this disease, but it's something about what this disease kind of triggered for these individuals, what it changed in their mind. And I think that's kind of what I saw, was that there was just a deeper appreciation for friendships, for connecting, for following passions, for, kind of dreaming big, doing big, kind of going for what you want now rather than putting things off.
Thank you for sharing that. What was one thing that I imagine when you work with such stories, that they must affect you also on a positive level, what you just shared, but also why didn't you get traumatized? This is something I couldn't get my head around. If you are surrounded by cases of people dying, and this is something that I struggle with when when I hate hospitals, for example. I just don't like them. And you seem to have found a few habits that helped you to not get overwhelmed by all this endless suffering and somehow find your own meaning and purpose in it. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, I love the way you said that, because that couldn't be further from the truth. But I love that it appears that way. But I worked, and I say worked with, but I was a kid myself. And so my experiences with children with cancer was before I received any psychological training as a therapist. So it was on a very personal level. And so I definitely got traumatized. I definitely experienced, caregiver, kind of fatigue and vicarious trauma and all of that. And it did end up, getting to a point where I had to step back from that work after about, 12 years or so, where I had to make that decision because I had to focus on healing myself and my own well-being, because I did get to a place because I wasn't prepared for that. Emotionally, I wasn't prepared. No one could prepare me for that, because it wasn't like I was going through a formal experience or had kind of, I was on a path, that was following in someone's footsteps. So it's very rare for someone to have gone through kind of the experience that I went through, where you're not being kind of professionally shadowed and mentored and all of that. And so it definitely, I did not have kind of boundaries and all of that. So I felt everything deeply and I experienced everything deeply, which I am so beyond grateful for, because it changed me and morphed me into the person that I am today, the clinician I am. But it did kind of burn me in many aspects and kind of take me to my knees and really have to decide, am I willing to sacrifice my own well-being to continue to follow this passion and kind of focus on helping these other individuals and their well-being? And I had to make that decision, which was so incredibly hard, but I decided to focus on myself and rebuilding and kind of regrowing. And I'm very grateful I made that decision, because now I can continue a life of giving. And it does look different at this point, but it's still tremendously, I would not have been able to have gotten to this point if I had not made that decision to kind of take the time to heal.
Interesting. Caroline, one of my biggest dreams is to one day somehow sneak my way into Harvard University. You already did that. Can you tell me a little bit about the crazy adventure that was for you of attending such a prestigious school?
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. The Harvard, because it's just, the name itself just brings up, for everyone, right? Like you hear the name Harvard and you think the best school, like for everyone, it brings up something. And so it's, I always had that. It was a bucket list thing for me. Like Harvard, if I'm smart, it means, I can get into Harvard. I can go there. And so I kind of followed that pursuit. And when I was in undergrad, I, decided that I wanted to go to grad school at Harvard, and did, kind of was already on track to go to a very good grad school. So really focused in on Harvard and making connections there and getting very much involved and doing work. And, I worked summers in different labs at Harvard before. So I kind of got, I did an internship there one summer, and then I went back the next summer and did some more research. And so got myself more integrated into the university before actually applying, so they could put a face to the application. Because when you're applying to a place like that, they're going to get thousands of applications from top students everywhere. And so it's not your GPA that's going to differentiate you. And it has to be something about kind of you personally that's going to differentiate you. And so to be able to be selected out of thousands of people to be like one of four in a class, that was a moment for me that felt beyond incredible. I remember it, viscerally, the whole moment of being accepted. And I think that was the moment that I had dreamt of. Actually going through the process of being there, it is a hard place to be as a grad student. I think as an undergrad, I don't know what the experience is like, but as a grad student, it is hard. It pushes you in many ways. And I think that's incredible because you learn so much. And so I think it has taught me so beyond so much about myself personally, but also it's given me such incredible skills that I use as a clinician working at some of the top places as part of Harvard Medical School, like working with individuals being treated there and being trained by some of the best clinicians in the world. That experience is something that I will never take for granted. That truly gave me so much that I use every single day. And I think also it really humanized for me success. And when I look at someone who I see as successful and having all these degrees of like feeling possibly inferior or things like that, it's not about that at all. So it's really about a lot of luck. It's a lot of, because there's so few numbers. So it's a lot of luck. It's about being able to take summers to intern. Like if I hadn't been able to have done that, I probably would not have gotten in. So because I was able to do that, it increased my chances likely. So a lot of things were in my favor in that respect. And a lot of people don't have those things in their favor. And so it doesn't mean that they're not as smart or can't get as good of training. But there is definitely something like once you're in those gates that you feel like you can sit at a table with absolutely anyone and not feel inferior, because you recognize that they're all just humans as well. And everyone has their flaws and lots of flaws. And they might just be really smart in one specific subject, but they have a lot of flaws as well. So it really humanized for me success and successful people and being able to really talk to anyone and not feel like I'm not smart enough or I'm not good enough because they did this or they got this award or they went there. So it brought things back to reality for me, which I'd like to try to share, especially when I work with, high school students whose only goal is to go to a specific school or whatnot, that it's much more than just the name. But it gives you a lot. It gives you a lot of experiences that are amazing. But I feel like there's experiences that you can also get in different places in different ways and all of that too, which is a long-winded answer. So it's definitely, I'm not like I went to Duke for undergrad and I am a Blue Devil fan and I have Blue Devil blood. I am like through and through, but I think that might've been because I was undergrad there. So I think that the difference between the two is likely because undergrad versus grad school, the intensity of your studies and the pressures are so different as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. My eyes sparkle right now because for me it's a similar thing because it's on my bucket list because I know that you can probably go to any university in the world and your entire lifetime you won't be able to consume the entire information that is in the library. But being a behavior designer, you know about the power of environment and it's something different when you really connect with people. And what I'm hungry for is to surround myself with people who don't think being a psychologist or studying is just a job or it's a life. I want people who are just excited about this thing as I am. And then let's see how far I can go in a way. And also, I think it's also what I was curious about is Harvard is also this manifestation of elitism. But you in your past, you have been taught by all those case studies and those stories how important it is to be in the moment. How do you balance your need for proving yourself, for achievement with just being a happy person?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. It is so hard. Let me tell you, it is hard. And I worked really hard on it when I was there. So I I made time, and it wasn't perfect and it didn't look perfect, but I made time to do things for me, and that I just enjoyed. So I was, doing like photography e-courses. I was blogging at that point, which was, I had a blog called The Beautiful Ripple Effect. I don't have it anymore, but I was writing a lot, so creatively. So I was doing things that fulfilled me and made me happy in other areas at the same time. And that might look like sometimes at that point that I was doing that at 3 a.m., but it was something that I looked forward to, that I had, that I gave myself. And so I never really let a day go by without kind of refueling in some way, some part of myself. But it definitely, if I were to go back and do it now, I would do things very differently, just because at that point I was very much driven by kind of external measures of success, and getting, really good grades and, all of that, versus like just getting by, like getting grades that will get by. Like no one's asking to see my transcript. And, kind of not focusing so much on every single test being this huge big deal. But I definitely would have balanced things a little bit better in that sense. But it definitely at that point was something that I was actively juggling, was this need to be vulnerable and authentic and real and in the moment. And then this sense of like walking onto campus and having to, pretend that I am like the smartest person that I know, and, know everything, and I've read everything and I've done everything, and I'm not worried about anything and have no flaws whatsoever. And it was definitely a weird jumble, because in that environment, having flaws and showing flaws it's not something that is it's definitely not encouraged. So that is something that is hard for sure. But it's something that I take very seriously, and I own my flaws. I'm proud of them, and kind of using them as part of my success.
You were talking about flaws. Are there any particular setbacks that have led for you personally to something positive later in your life?
No, I think the big one for me that I touched upon was a setback, was that decision of having to end. I had a nonprofit at that time for children with cancer, and giving college scholarships out, to stop that, to close it. That was huge for me. It felt like a personal failure. And it really, that was me. I didn't really even know who I was without that, because it'd been part of my life for so long. But it allowed me to start the next chapter of my life, which I don't think I would have been able to have done if I hadn't done that.
What were some particular mentors of yours that can be at Harvard University, can be clinical psychologists, can be just persons from your life, that have really helped you along the way of teaching you how to do things?
There's been, oh my gosh, so many people that have helped me along the way, but I think there's a few key people that have been very important. So I'm incredibly lucky that I have a mom and dad that are truly remarkable in every sense of the word. I'm beyond lucky and grateful. They are loving and unconditionally loving. They are supportive. They support every crazy dream of mine, every decision I've made, every bump in the road. They have done nothing but support, me just doing what makes me happy, and happiness being kind of the motivator, not something else. And I think that's kind of been a result of me also being so driven myself, that they haven't had to push me. It might have been different if I was kind of lazy and not doing my work, but so they didn't have to kind of approach me in that way. But they're people that are entrepreneurs that have kind of molded their own paths and have started out in one direction as lawyers and doing one thing, went into business in one area, curved to another area, and keep curving and keep navigating, keep dreaming and keep coming up with ideas, and never not following through. So following through and dreaming big and taking action. And oftentimes that means failing big as well. And so I've been able to see my parents from behind the scenes dream big, follow those dreams, sometimes fail big, and sometimes succeed big. And their response each time is the exact same. They just keep going. And so it's been for me just remarkable to have that, and to have that constant ability to kind of be able to ask them for advice, and get their feedback and all of that. Another mentor for me has been my husband. We've been together since high school. So we were high school sweethearts. So we've been together now for a long, long time, and on this path together. He's not a psychologist. He could be at this point, though. And he is my mentor, my rock, my sounding board, he's my secret weapon in every sense. He's my cheerleader, but he's also, for me, he's my person who is there, who will just sit with me when I'm struggling with something, or will just recognize it and validate it. And for me and a mentor, that is so much of it. Like I mentioned, is just being able to see, like, I'm dreaming big and this is my dream. And part of that dream is going to part of the journey is not fun, and recognizing that and not being able to change it, but just being with me and not forcing me to put on a happy face and kind of, pretend that it's not difficult, but kind of owning that this is difficult right now and recognizing that and trying to just kind of validate that for me. And so that was very, very, very helpful and incredible. And then I think, there's been a lot, but I think last but not least mentor-wise was I went to Duke, then Harvard, and then University of Miami most recently, and I got my Ph.D. there. And at University of Miami, my mentor was Isaac Prelitensky, and he is a remarkable human. He is a genius beyond belief. He's also just an incredible human being. And he saw me kind of broken from Harvard in many ways in terms of believing in my confidence in that sense. And he saw that, and he believed in me 1,000%. And he pushed me, and he got me to rebuild that sense of confidence incredibly. And I am so grateful for him for doing that and for seeing in me what I didn't see in myself at that time, which is, amazing when someone can see your potential and kind of push you when you're not pushing yourself. And so that was remarkable. And all of his research, and what I got to do a lot of research on for 5 years, was on well-being and flourishing and really how to make it very action focused. And so we broke down well-being into domains and looked at specific actions that contribute to specific domains of well-being. And we studied it, and he created this incredible intervention, and we did it, with the university, in the community. So it really gave me this remarkable experience of being able to first rebuild my confidence and believe in myself and trust my instincts, but then also to be able to understand psychology beyond that ivory tower. So beyond the journal articles, the textbooks, the practicums that you go through, the trainings, to see how it works when you take it into the community and you make mistakes, how you learn, how you apply things, how you adjust, how you research in a real world setting. So he helped me to create that bridge between kind of my academic researcher hat, clinician, to being a clinician / researcher, but also being very adaptable to the specific circumstances in the moment.
I'm inspired. What was his name again?
Isaac Prelitensky. Read his stuff. He's funny. He has a book. I think it's called The Laughing Guide to Wellbeing. And I actually have it here somewhere, but I can't find it. He's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing. So I am his biggest fan.
Carolyn, one selfish question for myself. I'm still struggling with, sometimes I feel I'm freaking bipolar from a confidence standpoint. And especially like I'm interviewing all those amazing people, and you must have come to something similar when you go to Ivy League schools and you met all those people who are just exceeding and achieving in all areas of their life. How do you deal with your own self-esteem? Do you have any hacks for myself and for my listeners to deal with anxiety and to have a stable confidence?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been really, it hasn't happened overnight, but it's been really adjusting my confidence to not be solely anchored on extrinsic measures, which could be anything, right? It could be like how many podcasts listeners you have, how many subscribers you have. For me, it was, what my latest, grade was, what my latest research, where my latest research article was published, or, if I was being accepted to speak at places, or how many patients I have. Do people want to see me? Do people keep coming back? And, there's so many different ways that you can look at yourself and measure your success extrinsically. And it's so much easier that way because it kind of is something you can look at, feels more tangible. But it's also, that is completely changeable at any moment, and it's out of your control. And so for me, bringing my confidence into what I know to be true, and what I know to be true about myself, and really focusing on that, and focusing more so on owning the things that I feel that make me maybe less confident, that would have made me less confident in the past. So some of the things that I would, feel are, maybe are different, or just like, I'm not as smart in this, or I have no idea about that, or, kind of owning it and connecting with that part of myself so that I can share that with people as well. And being able to share the parts of myself that maybe before I felt like I had to hide, allowed a sense of shame to kind of decrease, and for me to connect with other people from a place of like my real self, rather than the self that was this extrinsically validated person. So versus me kind of connecting with, let me tell you about, my degrees and all of this. That's not how I connect with people. I connect on a very different level. It's like, let me tell you about my latest struggles with my child at home, or how I'm struggling with Skype, and I have no idea how to use technology, and I wish I did, and I should. Or how I am awful at geography and probably don't know where many of the states in the U.S. are. I can probably pinpoint some, but very bad at it. And it's funny, right? But for a while, there were a lot of things about me that just felt like I had to hide because they weren't perfect. And I felt like everything had to be kind of glossy and perfect and all put together, but it doesn't. And that's not what I connect with in other people. And so I'm realizing that that's also that's not what I connect with in myself. So I really am starting to appreciate the parts of myself that I used to find sense of shame in, and, not look at in a positive way. So maybe I don't look at it positively, but I don't look at it negatively anymore. So maybe there are things that I'm just more neutral about, but I'm not hiding things anymore.
Caroline, you also deal with people who have depression, people who have anxiety, perfectionism, a whole bunch of disorders. Any transformational story of a patient you work with that stuck with you?
Oh gosh. I'm very, very lucky that most of my patients have huge transformations. And that's why this job is truly the most rewarding. It's not even a job. It is like a calling. It is a profession that allows you to walk alongside someone in the most vulnerable moments of their life, which many people cannot do. So it's remarkable. And I'm very grateful. I'm sure I've said that a million times. But so I get to see it all the time. And I'm so lucky that I get to see this all the time because I do deal with very serious disorders, major depression, anxiety disorders, panic disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, personality disorders, really everything is kind of, day to day. And I think for me, it's when the transformation happens, it happens pretty quickly in the sense that when someone begins to stop kind of resisting that they are depressed, like they are feeling this way, that this is what they are experiencing, and they're able to kind of walk into it and to face what they're feeling, that's when the transformation begins. So that's a lot of my work, is getting someone to feel comfortable being uncomfortable in many ways, and to really begin to feel what they're feeling. Someone famous, I forgot who it was. I feel bad taking ownership for this, but it's called like Name It to Tame It. So I think it's with anxiety. Daniel Siegel. Okay. Yes, he said that. Name It to Tame It. He's a psychiatrist who, if you don't know him, you have to know him. He's amazing. And he says, name it to tame it for anxiety. And it's true with anything. It's really being able to just recognize and be able to acknowledge, I'm suffering right now, being able to say that, because oftentimes we have all the symptoms and we all see what's going on. But until you say, like, I'm suffering and I really don't want to stay in this place, like I don't want to sit here forever, that's when the change can happen, because then you're motivated to do something different. But if you can't name it and it feels like this is just my entity, this is just who I am now, it feels too overwhelming to be able to begin to tackle as something that you can overcome or you can learn to live with in a way, but in a way that it doesn't navigate your life for you, but that it's alongside you in like a backseat role.
Caroline, let's move on to the end of the interview. I want to ask you a few questions more because I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm already stealing so much. So it is fun. It is fun.
No, this is so much fun. This is the most I'll talk all day, so it's awesome.
What do the first 60 minutes of your morning look like?
Oh gosh. Okay. Let's see. I knew I was going to get this question because I've been listening to your podcast. And so I was like, okay, let's come up with this. I was like thinking, I wish I could totally say that I'm one of those people that like wakes up and like start with this beautifully calm meditation, a glass of lemon water, and everything is just beautiful and calm. And one day maybe that will happen, but I doubt it. So right now,
I'm being woken up by my passion.
Oh gosh. Right now it depends. So this morning, for example, I got up at like 5:30, and I got dressed for the day. But kind of like slowly. And then my kids got up around 6:30. We had breakfast together, took them to school, took my son to school, and came into work. So that was really my first, kind of, 2 hours of the day. But if that's not what's going on, because my husband is away right now, if he's at home, he's very hands-on. He'll often take like morning duty so that I can go exercise, or some days I'll do some work in the morning before I go to work, or I'll have to get into work early. So it really depends on what's going on, but I really try to do something in the morning that allows me to be fully in the moment and kind of before I get into work mentality mode. Because when I get into work mode, I'm very much like a perfectionist, an all or nothing person. And so, which I see as a good thing because I'm now able to channel it just at work. And when I go home, I'm just at home with my kids and my husband. But so when I'm at home in the mornings, within that first 60 minutes, I'm definitely on the floor, like playing with my kids in some capacity, or I'm at the gym doing something, and then I'll play with my kids when I get home and then go into work. But so it's definitely me time. I'm not working the first 60 minutes of my day.
That's beautiful.
Unless there's a crisis, which does happen. I have to have that because I'm sure tomorrow that's going to happen. So I had to add that caveat in.
No, I have to ask what people do in the morning because mornings are really tough for me. And I'm curious how other people are doing. Maybe you can emulate some of their behaviors.
Yeah. Nights are tough for me, though. I get so tired. So I wish I could have that time when I get home and I can do stuff. I'm exhausted.
It's great. My girlfriend right now, she's she's the biggest morning person I ever saw in my life. She wakes up at like 5:30 with a big smile on her face.
Oh my gosh.
And when I wake up, I just look like I'm super hungover, even though I don't even drink alcohol. And she's always, Daniel, her smile. And I'm like, go away. I want to suffer alone.
No, she's so good. She's going to rub off on you and she's going to make you into that morning person.
I think so too. You have so many clients, and how do you protect yourself from secondary trauma? What habits are responsible for your resilience and your stress tolerance?
So I think for me, I was lucky because I got to go through it. So I've already had that experience. So I now know what not to do. Because, I learned when you don't have boundaries and you don't kind of focus and intentionally on creating those boundaries, that it will bleed into you. And so for me, the way I do it is I look at, every session is very, I'm in that session with that person, but I'm not emotional in that session. Like, I'm not there as a friend. So I'm there more, there's part of me emotionally that is connected, but most of it is more of the intellectual part of my brain. And so that's the difference from before. Before I was kind of overrun by emotions and kind of responding mainly out of emotion. But now a lot of it is me approaching the person, from a human, element and from compassion, but also using a lot of more of the rational part of my brain, the higher order thinking and all of that. So I'm not activating the emotional part as much. And I would think that would make me a worse therapist in many ways, but it doesn't. So I'm able to connect and I'm able to be real and vulnerable, which I think is very important as a psychologist. A lot of people don't, but for me it is. And also at the same time to be able to be really focused on the intellectual part of being able to kind of be a detective, look for clues in what they're saying, look for ways to kind of create a sense of belonging in the room, a holding space, come up with some wacky different challenges and creative techniques and strategies. And I use a lot of more so that kind of reasoning part than being driven by the emotional part. And when the emotional part gets kind of triggered, which of course it does, I'm able to recognize that and then kind of go back into the more rational thinking.
You were speaking about techniques. Do you have any simple psychology exercise or tool that people at home could use even if they are not in therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like what the issue is.
Let's say anxiety, for example.
Anxiety. Oh, I love anxiety. I don't love anxiety, but that's what I work with a lot. And I have a lot of my own.
I feel the same. Sometimes I say, I love depression. And then I'm like, I have to apologize to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, no, I also enjoy working with people with depression, but it's hard. That's definitely more exhausting emotionally. It definitely is, and takes from a different part of you. So I limit the number of people I work with that are in a major depressive episode currently. So I work with them, but I can't take my whole caseload can't look like that, or I would be completely overwhelmed emotionally. So there are limits in terms of like how I manage my caseload, so I don't get to that place as well. But with anxiety and tools, I think for me, what's really, and what I really emphasize a lot is approach rather than avoid. That's number one. So I say this, I think I said it once before, but I say this a lot with my patients, get very, very comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because with anxiety will kind of keep you in this like safe zone. It will want to keep you in a bubble. And if you want to maintain that anxiety, stay in that bubble. If you want to break free of that anxiety, you've got to break out of that bubble and go towards the thing that is driving that anxiety, driving that fear. So approach rather than avoid that anxiety. When you're experiencing more intense kind of anticipatory anxiety, where you're kind of jumping into the future, something I say a lot, and it's really simple, but it just brings you back to the moment, is just saying to yourself, like, in this moment, I am okay. just saying that over and over to yourself and giving yourself that calm reassurance rather than jumping to the future and catastrophizing and going to what could happen, what if, all of this, when in this moment you are safe, you are okay, and kind of staying there for as long as you need to kind of de-escalate the emotions so that you can get more into rational and logical thinking versus emotional thinking.
I know. Let's stop. Let's move to the last section of the interview, and then you are free to do what you love, as to help people. Okay, Caroline, what is your favorite word?
Oh gosh, favorite word. Okay, I probably said it a million times too. So my favorite word is definitely now.
Now, what is your least favorite word?
Should.
Should. What noise do you love?
My kids giggling.
What noise do you hate?
I hate my kids screaming.
What is the book that you recommended the most?
I recommend oftentimes, a book that impacted me a lot was Brene Brown's first book, which was, I thought it was just me, but it isn't. And so oftentimes for people with perfectionism or anxiety and that drive and fears related to that, I'll recommend one of her books. She has so many at this point, but I loved her first one.
What's a question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
I guess it would be what am I proud of about myself? What do I appreciate about myself? Because we focus so much on what we hate about ourselves. So I feel like we need to start focusing also on the parts that we actually appreciate.
If you could put a life slogan on every coffee cup in the world, what slogan would that be?
That's too much pressure. A coffee cup, too much. Oh my gosh, a slogan on every cup. Oh my gosh.
You can also say that's too much pressure. I think that's beautiful.
No. You have to put the warning, right? That this is hot. You have to do that. But then I think beyond that, I think I would talk about, what would I say? I would say maybe that statement that I said before. So in this moment, you are okay.
The last question, then we made it through the entire interview and I can finally let you alone. If you would die and stand at the gates of heaven, what would you like to see or hear?
Oh, that's such a sad question. Okay, let's see. What would I like to see or hear? I would like to hear that everyone in your family is going to be okay.
That's beautiful. Caroline, you made it, the entire interview. I'm so grateful. I'm smiling right now and thank you.
Oh my gosh. I'm smiling. That was so much fun. And the questions were amazing. So I so appreciate you asking me and taking the time out of your schedule to make this happen.
You don't have to be thankful. I'm very excited right now. And I think I run out of words because I'm not an English native speaker.
Your English is pretty much better than mine.
I don't think so.
You're amazing.
I wish you a lot of fun with your next therapy session and that you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you. You too.
Well, folks, this was today's episode. I hope this could add some value to you guys. This podcast still is in its experimental phase, so please let me know what you liked and didn't like. You can let me know on my blog, danielkarim.com, or on social media. As always, thank you so much for listening and tune in next time.